Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner practitioner Casey Weade.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
Casey leads a team of financial advisors with decades of experience helping families across the country retire with the confidence they deserve. The Purpose-Based Retirement assigns every dollar you've saved a specific purpose to meet a key retirement need.
Whatever risk you face, we've got a plan for that.
Stay tuned and learn how you can look forward to a worry-free, purpose-based retirement.
Good to see you again. I'm Lee Kelso here with financial planners Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson from Howard Bailey Financial. On the program today, we're going to begin by taking a look at the three stages of your financial life. There are important things to concern yourself with during each one of those, and we'll walk you through that. We have a viewer question. She's developed a pretty substantial 401k, and she'd like to convert that into a pension, wants to know if that's possible. And then a little bit later, the 6 keys to a financial retirement that is a success for you. So lots to cover today. Let's begin with that phases of our financial life, and you have an acronym for that, ACT.
We do, ACT, right? Because as we go through these different major phases of our life, we should be making different transitions through different types of investments, different types of financial plans should be structured, and ultimately we should be working with different types of advisors at those different stages, because different types of advisors have different types of specialties, whether you're in your accumulation stage, your consumption stage, or your taxation stage. Now, these are major phases that we go through. We should be making major transitions and thinking about different things at these different stages as well as we go through them, and they occur at different times for every single person, but there are some generalities that I think we can draw some conclusions from.
Yeah, so the younger you are, the more likely you are to be in an accumulation phase. So that's ages 20 to 55. The consumption phase is roughly 55 to 75 when you're heading toward and just beginning retirement, and then the taxation phase is nearer to the end of life. So what's important? What should I have top of mind in the accumulation phase?
Well, in the accumulation phase, we can see that it's a really long phase, right? We place it from age 20 to age 55, which is a very long period of time because we're focused on growth and accumulation really at all costs. We can afford the ups and downs in the market because we have a very long period of time before we need those dollars. And the accumulation stage happens at a different time for everyone, really. You know, if we're just getting out of school, maybe we don't have any student loans, we don't have any children, well then maybe we're starting to invest at that time. We're starting to accumulate assets so that we can get to that point called retirement. Alternatively, some of us have children, some of us have student loan debt. We want to get some of those debts paid down, the kids get out of the house, and then we're able to start socking away some of those dollars. And sometimes that doesn't happen for people until they're in their 30s or even 40s. And during those stages of time, there's things that we're focused on, which is growth, right? We're focusing on growth. So it's really about maximizing the efficiency for that growth. Very few financial advisors are ever going to beat the market. The ones that can beat the market have hundreds of millions of dollars in minimums. And so what you should really be focusing on is keeping your costs low and dollar cost averaging into index funds such as the S&P 500. Dollar cost average into several different index funds, keep your costs low. And also if you're starting to already maximize, maybe you have a large income, you're maxing out your IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, you've maxed out your tax advantage savings, now you might have to sit down with a financial planner and start to think about tax advantage savings opportunities. And that's when we do our tax planning. So keeping our taxes low and our fees and costs low, that's what we focus on during the accumulation stage.
Yeah, you're just trying to build your nest egg, right? And you want to do that through growth. And you don't always have to have an advisor by your side during that phase of retirement, but it's about reducing those costs and you get to keep more of the growth.
So let's first head into that second phase, the consumption phase, sort of midlife. What am I focusing on there?
That's probably the biggest transition that you're going to make is from that accumulation stage to the consumption stage. Now this should be a slow transition. It shouldn't be a hard and set date. Well, I'm all of a sudden in the consumption stage, I'm going to start doing my retirement planning. That's really what we're doing at this stage is we're doing our retirement planning. And if you think about what the goal is in retirement, why we wanted to retire in the first place, it wasn't so that you could worry about money. It wasn't so that you could go to dinner seminars and listen to financial talk shows like this. It was ultimately so that you could have peace of mind and not worry about your money in the first place. And that means you have to start worrying more about the asset, because you've already created the asset. Now you have to start worrying about protecting that asset and making it last a lifetime. So now, rather than focusing on the assets, focusing on the next best investment, now you're going to focus on your liabilities, the major risks that you're going to face during retirement. And every retiree faces the same basic risks. And that's why we put together a purpose-based retirement. Liquidity for emergencies, income to last a lifetime, growth for inflation protection, and then to take care of what's left over, we need to minimize taxes and have protection from healthcare costs, do our estate planning. So liquidity, income, growth, and estate planning is what makes up a purpose-based retirement so that we can really enjoy our retirement. This is when it starts to make sense to actually work with a financial advisor, because it's not about hitting home runs, it's about actually protecting that nest egg. That's why an advisor gets paid, in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. We built that nest egg. Now we just need to protect that nest egg, because it's going to provide us with our income for all the years to go. And you mentioned taxes there. That's one thing that a lot of people just aren't focusing on during that consumption phase. But that's a time when somebody's 55, 60, 65, they retire early, start to take a proactive approach to taxation. And that's where you can really get your financial act together.
Yeah, it's a broad-based plan, including things like taxation, but the next stage is a little different.
Yeah, so I'm at the end of I'm 75 to 95. Why in that age, when I might be paying a lower overall tax rate on my income, why am I focusing on taxation?
You know, what we need to be thinking about as investors, and I'd say prudent investors, responsible individuals, is what happens with the money once you're gone? What happens with your life savings once you've left this planet and you look back, what do you hope it accomplished? You know, did you hope that you left Uncle Sam as your largest beneficiary? Because I doubt it.
No.
You know, most of the people that I work with want to make sure that they have enough to last the rest of their lives, and then, hey, whatever's left over, but even whatever's left over, we want to make sure that Uncle Sam's not the biggest beneficiary, our children are, or the church is, and that takes some tax planning. This is when we start thinking about transitioning that legacy to the next generation. And that means making sure that what's typically people's largest asset, also their largest liability, their IRAs and 401ks, we minimize that tax as it's passed on to the next generation. That might mean things like stretch IRAs, might even want to take advantage of things like Roth conversions in the meantime, and I would stretch that age potentially sometimes down to age 70, because that's when required minimum distributions happen. And now you have to start putting the plan together to not only minimize those required distributions, but also minimize the ongoing taxes as you start reinvesting those things.
It seems that some people might be surprised that a certified financial planner is so focused on taxes instead of a CPA.
Well, a CPA is really trained to look backwards and go, hey, well, did we save you money last year? And if that's what they get rewarded for, right? You walk into your accountant's office and they say you owe X amount of dollars, they'd go, well, it would have been nice if it was a little bit lower than that. That's what they get rewarded for. And financial planners are doing financial planning. What's this going to look like 10, 20, 30 years down the road? What's this going to look like once I'm gone? We need to start doing our tax planning today rather than waiting for tomorrow.
Yeah, because we talk about raising rates of return. Well, you can give your advisor a big high five. He increases your rate of return, but if he saves you tens of thousands of dollars on taxes,
I give him a wet kiss.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, we're going to move ahead there, and we hope that you will be one of the next 10 callers to pick up the phone and take advantage of an offer we have for you. For the next 10 callers, we're offering a complimentary review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's a chance to get an education about your money, because really we want you to make the best decisions you can for yourself moving forward for you and your family. So for the next 10 callers, Casey and the team will make time on the calendar to sit down with you and help you find your own purpose-based retirement. All right, we're back with questions from viewers in just a second.
Let me help you create the retirement you dream of. Go to my website and pick one of 3 education options to get started today. Get a copy of one of my retirement planning books, sign up for a purpose-based retirement live event, or go to the Purpose-Based Retirement University. 2 days of college-level retirement planning instruction. With the right education and proper coaching, I believe anyone can create the retirement they dream of. It all begins with one step. Visit thepurposebasedretirement.com.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey, Weade, and Marshal Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
Each week, Casey and the Howard Bailey team get lots of email from viewers, and we pick out some of those questions and ask those people to join us on the program. First up today is Jeffrey from Fort Wayne.
Casey, I have some stocks that I've held since the 90s that have some unrealized capital gains, and I want to reduce my exposure in the market, but I'm wondering if I should take those gains now or wait to see what tax reform brings about.
Well, Jeffrey, you never want to let the tax tail wag the dog here and wait on something that may or may not ever happen. And under the new long-term capital gains rules, under what we've known so far from the Trump tax proposals, it might not be a far cry from what we see today. It might actually be more advantageous for you to go ahead and lock in some of those gains that you have today rather than waiting to see what's going to happen in the future. A $75,000 income today can keep you in the 10-15% tax bracket. If you're married filing jointly, you may not pay any taxes on a portion of those capital gains, and it may make sense to just start chipping away at some of those things. The one big change might be the Medicare surtax, which is over $250,000 in investable income for married couples filing jointly, and that's at 3.8%. So that'll probably be the biggest change. Currently, you can go all the way up to $400,000 in taxable income before you get from 15% to a 20% tax rate. So you've got a lot of room there to take on some gains. You just might want to watch out for that Medicare surtax rate at the $250,000 level. But keep this in mind. If you have let's say a $500,000 position, or let's say a $400,000 position for that matter, you've got a $400,000 position in a $600,000 portfolio, you've got a very concentrated position. And let's say you have $200,000 in gains within that position. A 4% tax would cost you $8,000. On a position that's $400,000. That means that position only needs to move about 2% to the downside to justify even paying the Medicare surtax today. So again, don't let the tax tail wag the dog. Make sure you're incorporating this individual stock into a broad-based financial plan. The market can move very quickly in very short periods of time, like we've seen in the past, especially with an individual stock position that's concentrated in the overall portfolio. So sit down, get a comprehensive financial plan. You may even find you don't need to reduce that position as much as you thought you needed to.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He may just need to rebalance the position a little bit. I mean, we're talking since the 90s, right? A lot has changed. I imagine that position's gone up quite a bit. What's it done to the overall risk of the portfolio? Maybe you just need to get a stress test done, Jeffrey, and so we can tell how much risk you're actually taking in that sector. Maybe it's tech stocks since the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, if that was a 10% position, it's probably now more like a 50 or 60% position. So we definitely want to see some rebalancing, but like you said, don't let the tax tail wag the dog.
Well, we might also be able to throw in some uncorrelated assets into that overall mix rather than selling or generating capital gains. Maybe we generate a little capital gain, we throw in some uncorrelated assets that are going to move in different directions rather than that position that you currently have in order to reduce your overall risk. And that's really what we're trying to do. And it can be done in a lot of different ways.
All right, thanks for the question, Jeff. We're going to jump out to Rick in Fort Wayne next. Rick, go right ahead.
I told my advisor I was concerned about how much risk we were taking with other investors. So he has proposed some options, strategies, and solutions. Are options really the best solution?
You know what, Rick? I would say no. The short answer is no. It's a little bit like throwing water on a grease fire to me. You know, I used to joke with my clients if they wanted to start trading options.
I've done that. That's really dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous. But when I used to tell my clients who wanted to start dabbling in stock options to just hop on I-69, you know, get going real fast, roll the window down, and throw $500 out the window, because that's like their first options trade. And if your advisor is suggesting protective puts or a collar, I mean, these are strategies that can be put in place, but they're certainly not the first tool I think of when I'm trying to protect or reduce risk for somebody that walks into our office.
Well, this might be actually a solution that we might use for our first caller. You know, our first caller having a concentrated stock position, maybe this makes sense to use a collar or use a protective put, use some different types of option strategies to reduce the overall risk of that position, maybe even generate some income in the meantime, and if it dips, we end up selling a portion of that individual stock. But if we're talking about a portfolio that's already diversified, or we're talking about an IRA where we can really put together some strategies that can reduce our overall risk, that are truly going to reduce our overall risk and solve the real problem, which is putting together a financial plan, giving us a guaranteed income strategy or an inflation strategy or an estate plan or emergency fund, then we want to look at other things other than just, well, let's throw some options into the portfolio to reduce the risk. That tells me we're working with someone that doesn't have any other tools in their toolbox, and they're trying to turn I would say if we were going to try to put a nail in the wall, we'd use a hammer. This is somebody that might end up actually using the bottom of their shoe, it sounds like to me.
Flashlight or something, yeah.
All right. Let's go ahead to Lorraine. Lorraine, your question from Albion.
I'm planning on retiring this year. I do not have a pension, but I have a large 401k, and I'm wondering if I can change my 401k into a pension.
Well, Lauren, you might be able to accomplish that. You really can. There are tools out there for that today. Because if we think about what a 401k was originally created for, it was kind of the end of pensions, right? Pension gave us a guaranteed income for the rest of our lives, while the 401k allowed us to save our dollars so that we could ultimately create an income that would last the rest of our lives once we got to retirement. And so once you get to retirement, now you've had this accumulation asset, your 401k, it's meant to grow at all costs, go through major dips and peaks in the market, and you can go through those ups and downs while you're slowly putting dollars in that 401k. You're dollar cost averaging into the market. When the market's low, you buy more of the market. When it's high, you buy less of the market, effectively timing the market without having to know anything about it. Now, once you step into retirement, those valleys are going to hurt because now you're violating the #1 rule of investments. You could be selling when the market's low. That's reverse dollar cost averaging. We might be able to take a portion, probably not all the 401k. It may make sense to take a portion of that 401k and take care of those paychecks you can't live without during retirement, create some guaranteed retirement income, and still give you control over those dollars, and then set some other dollars of that 401k aside to take care of inflation protection moving forward. But let's look at a diversified strategy, which means taking care of multiple needs that you're going to have, not just income, but also inflation, emergencies, long-term health care needs, and taxes.
Yeah, trying to go out there and get a private pension, right? That's something individuals can do. I think what's lost on a lot of people is your 401k was designed, most people look at it like a growth vehicle. How big can I make my 401k? Where that pension is a liability-driven investment. And those pension folks are looking at that liability of all those folks that are stepping into retirement, and they're reducing the risk for all those folks that are getting ready to turn 60 and 65. We need to start looking at our own 401ks much in the same way by the liabilities, not just of today, but of tomorrow.
Yeah, Harvard did a study here a few years ago that found that this generation of retirees is going to struggle more in retirement than any other previous generation because they spent so much time focusing on growth, focusing on accumulation, getting comfortable with taking risks, buying stocks, buying mutual funds, and they're not going to be able to satisfy their retirement income needs in a consistent and reliable way, with using the same exact vehicles that actually got them to retirement. It's time for a mind shift as you make that shift into retirement.
Yeah, I've heard that actually from some of your clients who said it's been so helpful. I'm good at saving, I'm good at accumulating. I don't know what to do about providing for myself in retirement, and that's why it's been so helpful. It's been interesting. And I think that's one of the things we hope you'll take advantage of is a chance to sit down and talk with certified financial planners at Howard Bailey for the next 10 people who call right now. We're offering a complimentary review of your entire financial and retirement plan, a chance to learn more about your money and your future, because we really do want you to make the best decisions for yourself moving forward. So for the next 10 callers, Casey, Marshall, and the team at Howard Bailey will make time on their calendar to visit with you and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. Here's our question of the day. We hope you'll get this one right. Has to do with the stock market and bull market runs. Which one of these has been the longest bull market run in history? We have the answer when we come back.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weade and Marshal Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
Hey, going into the break, we asked our question of the day, and it had to do with the bull market history. Which is the longest bull market in history? Of all the choices we presented there, Casey, which one is correct?
Well, Lee, the answer is actually 1990 through 2000. So we saw the introduction of the internet in the late 70s. We had the introduction of 401ks. We had the largest generation in history from the 80s through the 90s that now could take money directly out of their paycheck and inject it straight into the stock market. We had deregulation. We had a very positive environment for the market to do exceptionally well, and it did until it didn't. Until we got to the dot-com bubble, the bubble burst, and then we saw 2000 to 2003, we had 9/11 occur, draw the market down further, and we had an over 40% loss over that 3-year period. The first time in history the market lost 3 years in a row. And now we find ourselves in the second longest bull market in history today. And the question is, when is it going to change? Because nothing actually goes up forever. Despite our belief that we would love to see it continue to go up forever, the reality is that the market will not continue to go up for the rest of our lives. Eventually there's going to be a change. And we've been through this before. We've seen major rises and strong bull markets throughout history all the way back to 1900. From 1900 through 1920, we saw a major correction after that. Then 1920 to 1933, 1960 to 1974, 97 to 03, as we just discussed. After the longest bull market in history, we saw 2000 to 2003, 2006 to 2009, the financial crisis, and now we find ourselves here today. What's going to be next? It's not all about hitting home runs. So if you're starting to feel kind of antsy about getting back into the market, it's okay if you want to sit on the sidelines or be a little bit more conservative, because it's really not about getting all of the upside. It's more important that we protect ourselves against the downside. To illustrate that, I want to share with you some positive returns versus some losses. So if we were to make 100% if we were to make it a 50% loss, Lee, what would it take in order to make up those losses?
We'd take that 50% plus more.
Right, it would take 100% return to get us to back to even. If we look at $100,000 and we have a 50% loss, now that 100 turns into $50,000. We need 100% to get back to our $100,000 mark. If we suffered a 60% loss, it would take 150% in the way of rate of return just to get back to even. To further illustrate that point, we can look at some really interesting charts that show us what missing the 10 best days or missing the 10 worst days really would have looked like. So if we go back to 1998, if we invested $100,000 and over that period of time we took that $100,000 and just bought into the S&P 500, bought and hold like John Bogle Vanguard would tell us to do, over that period of time that $100,000 would have turned into $256,000. Now, had we actually hit the 10 best days, if we would have missed the 10 best days over that same period of time, our $100,000 would have turned into $128,000 over that same period of time. Now, what if instead we would have missed the 10 worst days? Missing the 10 worst days puts us on the red line, turning that $100,000 into $512,000. Again, it's not about how much we make during the good years, it's about how much we protect in those really bad years. And that means we need to be fearful when others are greedy. And today we see CNBC's Fear and Greed Index putting us in the measure of extreme greed today. We see more and more people coming in our office. Just the other day, Marshall sat down with a gentleman that said, I've been in cash for the last 5 years and I'm sick of seeing everybody do so well. It's time for me to get back in. But what we have to do is we have to make sure that you're investing with logic and not emotion. We don't want to have this happen. And this is what happens with most investors. We get excited, we buy on the way up, and then at the very top when it's getting euphoric, we buy even more. Then as the market begins to pull back, we don't sell until it's too late and we're at the bottom, and then we don't get back in until it's too late as well. We have to make sure that we're not investing on emotion, we're investing on logic, and also recognizing where we're at from a valuation perspective with the market. Is the market overvalued? Is it undervalued? That'll tell us a good indicator anyways of what type of returns we can expect moving forward. If we look at the Cape-Shiller Index, that puts us on a price to earnings valuation today that is now the third most expensive market throughout history. That puts us second to the 1929 Great Depression and the dot-com crash of the early 2000s. Long term means long term. So if you're maybe 30 years out from retirement or 40 years out from retirement, you might still have time, even to dollar cost average, into a more expensive market. But if you're closer to retirement, if you're 10 years out, 5 years out, even 15 years out from retirement, it might be time for you to start thinking just a little bit differently about how you're investing. Start thinking about protecting that nest egg rather than hitting any home runs. Take this for instance. We talk about the lost decade. Well, the lost decade was actually a little bit longer than just 10 years. If we go back to the year 2000, after 2000 to 2003, people almost made up their losses in 2007. The 2008 financial crisis ripped it out of their hands, and they finally got back to even after a total of 12 years. Now, if we would factor in inflation into that calculation, we would have seen that it took individuals 16 years to actually make up those losses. And that's what I want you to keep in mind as you begin to get closer and closer to retirement, is that not only today is the market looking very expensive, but people are getting more and more greedy in the market that we see today. And it's time for you, if you're at or near retirement, to start thinking about investing a little bit differently and saying, hey, it's not about the home runs. It's not about getting all the upside. It's more important that I protect against the downside. And more than anything else, sit down and get a broad-based, comprehensive financial plan. It's not all about investing, it's now about financial planning. On the way to retirement, it's been about investing in your accumulation years. Now in your consumption and taxation years, we have to think about our risks, our liabilities. Where's our emergency money? What about income that's going to be there regardless of whether the market's up or regardless of whether the market's down? Inflation protection and taking care of what's left over with our estate planning.
Well, are there some vehicles, are there some tools that you can use that lets me have some of that upside but limits my downside?
There are tools out there that exist like that. However, we have to be cautious because any type of tool that's out there, whether it's a mutual fund, a stock, or a bond, or an annuity for that matter, or a life insurance policy, some of those vehicles can be very good to us. However, there's some very bad mutual funds out there as well, right? And there's one, for instance, that I use when I see the market being as overvalued as it is today, where I say, you know, I've got this extra cash. And I said, hey, Dad, what should I be doing with this cash? Should I go ahead and put it in the market? I've got a long time till retirement. He said, well, why don't you do what you tell your clients to do? Well, that's a novel idea. And so I allocated it to a policy that actually now gives me the ability to make as much as 10% over the next 12 months if the market goes up. But if the market goes down, I can't lose anything. If it goes down 40%, I'm totally liquid and I can have back all of my money, and then I can buy equities with it at a better time. So there are vehicles out there, but you have to sit down with someone that's an independent advisor that can share with you all these tools and find out if they're right for you.
And that's an opportunity I hope you'll take advantage of now. For the next 10 callers who give us a ring, we're offering a complimentary review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's that opportunity Casey just mentioned to learn more about your money and your needs heading into retirement so you can make the best decisions possible for yourself and your family. So for the next 10 callers at the number on your screen, Casey and his team will make time to sit down with you and guide you through your very own purpose-based retirement. And if you'd like to learn more about the purpose-based retirement, you can always order a copy of Casey's book at thepurposebasedretirement.com. Visit us at howardbailey.com or drop an email to info@howardbailey.com, and we might use your question here on the program. We'll see you next time.